Well, good morning, everyone. It is so good to be with all of you today, and I know that a lot of, July 3rd? A lot of us are kind of scattered, and that's okay, but we can make up for it in spirit, right? We don't have to act sleepy like Eutychus fell asleep on the windowsill. We talked about that last week. Nobody's falling asleep today, right? We're here in spirit. Amen? Amen. Yes. All right. So a couple of, updates for y'all. You might have noticed something when you walked in. It's okay if you didn't, but I hope that you do next time. Is we have this beautiful baptism font that has been here since this church has been here. And there's this whole beautiful story as to why it is in the doorway, because God's grace is the first thing that occurs to us in our lives. And so as we walk into the place of worship, the baptism font is right there. And so we were talking about it in various groups and meetings and whatnot, and we said, why not fill that thing up every single Sunday and have all of us be able to remember our baptism as we walk into worship? And so we have a new plaque there, and it says just that. It says, you are a child of, welcome to worship, touch the waters, remember your baptism, and know that you are a child of God. And so you were invited. It's a new worship practice, so just get ready. I know change is strange sometimes, but as you walk into this place, I invite you to touch the water, and I like to put a cross on my forehead just to remember my baptism and remember that God's grace is always washing over me. So you're invited to do the same. So that's a new thing that's happening here in this sanctuary that we're really excited about. I also want to acknowledge some people. We have three wonderful, amazing people. We've got Bill Wolf, we've got Yasmin, who I don't know if Yasmin's here or not, but she's usually at one of these doors. And then we've got Joe, who are amazing greeters. They greet y'all every day when you come in, every Sunday when you come into worship. Aren't they amazing? Yes. So I want to appreciate them because to be real honest, they're our only greeters, and so they do it every Sunday. So FYI, in case the Lord is compelling you to be a greeter at the 9:30 service, because we've got the same ones that do it every Sunday. And so we've got Rebecca, who sets up this rotation of greeters to help out, and so that, same people don't have to do it every Sunday. They do an amazing job. But I believe that some of y'all can do an amazing job too. So if you feel led to be a greeter here at the 9:30 service, it's a great way to welcome people to church. We are a super friendly church, and I want to give all of you the opportunity to be a part of that friendliness. Okay, so we are in week 2 of the Faces of Our Faith series. That means that we have, like Kate said, there's expressions of worship outside of the sanctuary, so don't leave before you get your popsicle and before you participate in that. There's a question that kind of prompts, and it's based on the sermon today. As well as, I see the front row here is they're teachers mostly, and they are participating in the activity. So they get an A+. Yes, you got in and a clap. But over here on this table is coloring pages. If you feel awkward about standing up now, it's okay. You can. You're welcome to. But next week, come back and get a coloring page, and you can color through some of the kind of artistic expressions of this Faces of Our Faith series. It's okay to color while I'm preaching because it reminds me that you have not fallen asleep. So let's launch into week 2 of the Faces of Our Faith series. I'm actually, and what it is in case you weren't here last week, we're going to dive deep into some of the lesser known stories in the Bible and talk about how that relates to our faith. And we're also going to think about people in our lives that have done the same for us. So for example, last week, Paul was there to catch Eutychus when he fell asleep in church and fell out of the window. Yeah, that really happened. So crazy. It's in the book of Acts. But so he went down and he caught him and he wrapped his arms around him. And so we talked about who was there to catch you when you fall. So this week, we're talking about who is there that even was there before you even existed, and even in your life, that has laid the foundations for your faith today. Who has done something in your life that has created, in a faithful way, that has created opportunities for you to grow in the faith. So first, I start many sermons, and this is not intentional, but I'm going to start this sermon the same as in the 80s. That's how I say it. I talk about the 80s a lot for some reason. In the 80s, the best thing about going to the doctor's office was the Highlights magazine that was in the waiting room. I loved, and I think we went to the dentist, and the Highlights magazine wasn't in the dentist, so I didn't like the dentist. I liked the doctor because they had Highlights magazine. And the best part about the Highlights magazine was the hidden pictures pages. And I often was hopeful that I would spend a lot of time in the waiting room so that I could do some hidden pictures. And so, in hidden pictures, you see the big picture, but then there are also little tiny hidden things hiding within the big picture. And so, if we look at this picture here, I see the word wet on the umbrella. So this is more of a hidden words thing. The word wet on the umbrella. Do y'all see any more hidden words in this? There is something in a puddle, I hear. The word, what is that word in the puddle? Damp in the drain. And then, stormy in the tree. See, y'all, isn't this fun? Okay, so in these hidden pictures things, we know that there are things within the big picture. And as we talk about our two different Bible stories this morning, we're going to think about what are the hidden stories within the big picture. Exploring stories of people who helped shape our faith. And I want you to remember that faith seeks out the hidden. Faith seeks out the hidden. Many times in history or in our Bible stories or in our just regular stories, we can see the big picture of what's going on. Today we're looking at two Bible stories that zoom straight in on some of those lesser known people. So first, we're going to talk about Shifra and Puah. And the folks that created this series, it's called a Sanctified art, they created these paintings as well that you see around the church. I heard somebody in the hallway saying, "Is that Van Gogh?" It's not. It's a Sanctified art. There's artists that are part of this worship company that have created these beautiful paintings. But so Shifra and Puah, we first meet them in the very first chapter of Exodus. So Exodus, if you don't know, it's the story basically of Moses and how the enslaved Israelites were in Egypt, and Moses helped get them out of that with God's leadership and God's guidance. And so this was even before Moses was born. So that's the big picture, is that the Egyptians had enslaved the Hebrew people, and the Hebrew people, he was thinking that enslaving them might make them just not want to go on. But they did, and they continued to grow in number. And over the years, they just kept having more and more babies. And the king did not want the population of Hebrew people to grow. And so he says that they should kill all the boys that are born. And so he found these two midwives, Shifra and Puah, and they were Hebrew midwives, and he said, when you go and assist any births, if it's a boy, that boy should be killed. And so Shifra and Puah, being the Hebrew people that they are, they didn't want to kill their own, obviously they didn't want to kill babies, but they didn't want to kill people that they were Hebrew people. They were against this. And so they let the boys live. And then they were questioned by this. They knew they were going to be questioned by it, but how could they go on with this murderous scheme? And their answer was pretty funny. I found it humorous. They were like, well, Pharaoh, so here's the deal. I don't know what Egyptian women are like, but when Hebrew women have babies, they have them real quickly. And so they don't even need us, basically. Like, that baby is born by the time we get there, and we just can't even find the child after that. And for some reason, Pharaoh believed them, which I thought was pretty hilarious. But, and so Pharaoh, he bought into it, and he said, okay, well, I don't like that, so what we're going to do is we'll just find all the boys that are born and just throw them in the river. So what they did, or what they refused to do, kind of changes the tone, changes the situation for all of these families, for these enslaved Hebrew people. But these midwives, they showed great bravery. And the way they took a stand set the example for other Israelites so that they too could stand up to Pharaoh's oppressive rule. They didn't have to go along with this. They did not have to be a part of this evil. And so then when Moses was born, Moses' family felt powerful and brave enough because of that foundation that Shifra and Puah left behind. And they said, we don't have to do this either. We can put this baby we can put him in the Nile, sure, but we'll put him in a basket and send him down the Nile floating, which is what they did. And so then he was safely sent down the river and ended up at Pharaoh's family, where he would grow up and be in a position to free the Israelites from slavery. And so that foundation, what these ladies did, these midwives did, cleared a path for Moses to do what he did. Now, in many Old Testament stories, the main character is God. And God usually has a speaking role or initiates some sort of action. But in this case, with Shifra and Puah, because they were faithful to God, they knew exactly the kind of stand they must take. They knew exactly the kind of risk they must take. Don't get me wrong, God is in this story, but just not in the way that we're used to reading about God in Old Testament stories. Not in the way that we would expect. God is working and moving and inspiring God's people to do amazing things through people. And that's the way that our faith operates in most cases today, is that we see God through the actions of other people. We see God's grace and forgiveness and love take place through the things that the people around us do. And in those days when we feel powerless and we feel all of the tension of the world going on around us, and we feel the weight of it in our day-to-day lives, it is only by the power and the presence of God at work in us that we are able to stay grounded. And not only grounded, but fruitful, speaking the truth in love, and stepping in for those who are powerless. Another story I'd like to highlight is the daughters of Zelophehad. And here is where I give you a reminder that there is no right or wrong way to pronounce Bible names, because basically we're all pronouncing them wrong because we don't, speak Aramaic or Hebrew or Greek. And so we're basically pronouncing them all wrong. And so as long as you pronounce them with confidence, Zelophehad, confidence, then it's correct. So just FYI, don't be intimidated by hard to pronounce Bible names. Just make it up. So this is in the time of Moses. And so this happened just one generation after our first story, which means that the actions that Shifra and Puah took made it possible for Moses to lead the way out of Egypt, which made it possible for the daughters of Zelophehad to make a request that would then change their community and the way that they saw one another. So let's back up and tell the story. So these 5 women, and I'm going to read their names too. Double dog dare me. Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. Look at that. It's in the book of Numbers. But these 5 women approached Moses and the whole assembly, probably all men, we can assume. And so these 5 women, they stood, can you imagine? Here's an image of them standing up, side by side, lined up, ready to make their request. And so they stood before all of these people in power, people in charge, and they told their story. They said, our father, Zelophehad, he was an honorable man. He has not been a part of any of the shenanigans that have gone on in our story up to this point. He is an honorable man. He's a good man, and he has a good name, and we want to keep that name. And so our father died, and there are no brothers, no male heirs. And as the law was established, it said that everything goes to the male heirs. But there were no male heirs. And so they requested that they receive their father's inheritance, not just simply for financial gain, although it probably would be good to have some money to, be able to eat and survive and that kind of stuff. And it would also give them land to live on, which is important. But the most important thing for them was that the family name was not lost, that they would still be a part of that family and having that name being carried on. Because in those days, it was so important for generation after generation after generation to carry on values, to carry on connection, to carry on a sense of home. And so they brought this before Moses, and Moses was like, let me go ask God. I'll be right back. And God said, the daughters are right in what they're saying. By all means, give them their property. Hand over their father's inheritance. And so here we are looking at the hidden picture within the larger picture of our story of faith. And this story, we would normally skim right over. You wonder, some of these stories they throw in the Bible, and you wonder what they mean in the long run. Sometimes we might have even forgotten these people's names. But then if we look at them, we see world-changing boldness and bravery and faithfulness, don't we? The only way they received their inheritance, their family name, their place in community, was because they asked. Sometimes a life of faith means that we ask hard questions, and we seek ways of living that are life-giving. Jesus came so that we might have full, abundant, eternal life. Instead of following these laws that are put in place that bring us down, that take life out of us, the daughters of Zelophehad were all about doing things that gave them life. Anything that does not give life must be examined and questioned. And they did just that. We might get stuck in patterns sometimes of this is what I have to do, just because it's always what has been done. So how might we be like Shifra and Puah, or the daughters of Zelophehad, and break that mold? Maybe it's a change of schedule that we embark upon. Maybe we think that we are stuck on a certain schedule or career or way of life or anything, but knowing that we can be on top of that. We can make our own choices in who we're with, in what we do, and how we spend our time, knowing that time is an important and valuable resource. Maybe it's speaking up when somebody is treated unfairly. Maybe it is a switch from being self-focused to being others-focused. This week in my youngest two went to gymnastics camp, and some of the kids in her class were saying ugly things about skin color. They were saying ugly things about adoption. And it was just an ugly situation. And my 6-year-old stood up to them. And she said, y'all, we don't talk like this. And she told her teacher, and they all had a big talk about how we don't do things to make other people feel small or left out or like they're not important. And if a 6-year-old can do it, I think we can too, can't we? That's right. And so there are so many things that we can do to break the mold of thinking that we always have to accept things the way they are and things that are taking life out of us. Maybe there's some change in your life that can make some sort of impact, some similar impact that the people in our stories have made. We are witnesses to what God is doing in our lives, and when we act and we speak in God-filled ways, we are pointing straight to God. God is active and living in our world today. God is not solely in the big, epic moments, but even in the midst of our ordinary circumstances. We might miss it when we're so busy looking at the picture at the surface. Because when I turned around and I was looking for those words hidden, I said, man, I saw those the other day when I looked at this picture, but I just don't see them now. We've got to look to see what's going on in those hidden pictures. When we take a deeper look, like Shifra and Puah and Zelophehad's daughters, people like that are all around us. Of those who speak words of kindness when the rest of the world is speaking hate. Those who aren't afraid to ask tough questions. Of those who won't be cast aside by societal norms. Of those whose actions change the course of even our lives. Who are the people in your life whose faithful actions have brought you to where you are? Think about it. Who are those people in your life? As we celebrate our country's birthday, we are reminded of all the people who made the United States what it is today. What a beautiful country that we get to live in. And we're reminded of the people who even came to the United States by way of Ellis Island years and years ago. Many of you are here today because of people who took bold, faithful steps to come into this country. Some of us the people that have gone before us had a difficult journey even to get here. We're reminded of the people in our country who stood up against slavery and stood up for voting rights, reminding us of Zelophehad's daughters and how they had to petition a right to their land and their lives. We're reminded of people in our life who helped raise us in the faith, or the certain string of events that happen to set this thing in motion that brings you where you are today. Can you think about all the people in your life that help set things in motion to where you are today? If I hadn't accepted my first full-time ministry job at the church in Cartersville, which I highly considered not, because I went back to my home church and I was a youth minister there for a while, and I loved it so much I did not want to leave. But the problem was I wanted to be in full-time ministry, and that was a part-time position. And so I knew God was leading me to ministry. I had not shed so many tears in my life about leaving one place and going to another than I had when I left my home church and went to the church in Cartersville. But when I got there, I met my husband in Cartersville, so that's a good thing. And I had never once in my life had a woman as a pastor. And so one of the associate pastor was a woman, and she taught me about my call to ministry and let me examine that, and empowered me that I too could listen to a call to ordain ministry. And so taking that position up in Cartersville freed me up so that I could do that. If someone didn't tell me about the need for foster parents and how much of a need that was out there, Chris and I would not have a family that is so bright as we do now. That changed the course of our lives. If a friend didn't tell me that I was a natural leader, that I was capable, that I was important when I was in high school, I might never have had the confidence to go into ministry, because that confidence was something that I really struggled with and for that person to speak truth in me, to see something in myself that I had not seen myself, that led me into the ability to do something new. So think about it in your life. Who changed your life through the grace of God? Take a minute to think about that question and give thanks for that person and for God shining through that person. Think about the type of bravery it takes to change the world in the way that Shifra and Puah did, in the way that the Zelophehad's daughters did. And let's take on some of this God-centered bravery and change the world together, shall we? I want us, we're going to pray now, but I'm going to pray Psalm 124 because it's a beautiful prayer that speaks to God and what all God does and God's power in our lives. So let's pray. If the Lord had not been on our side, let Israel say. If the Lord had not been on our side when people attacked us, they would have swallowed us alive when their anger flared against us. The flood would have engulfed us, the torrent would have swept over us, the raging waters would have swept us away. Praise be to the Lord who has not let us be torn by their teeth. We have escaped like a bird from the fowler's snare. The snare has been broken, and we have escaped. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. Amen.